Can we prove anyone has ever reached paradise? This question's intent is vague, but it can be interpreted as referring to the inherent paradox in proving the existence of paradise. If paradise exists, then the ones who reach it will remain there for eternity, forever enveloped in joy and satisfaction. If someone does leave paradise, it's because they weren't fully satisfied, so it was never a paradise for them. Therefore, those who reach paradise cannot be found and should not exist outside of paradise. So, can you prove the truth of someone who does not exist? Does truth that cannot be proven become worthless? What is the true question masked behind such cynicism? You may find the story that's about to unfold to be unpalatable. It's a story meant to make you uncomfortable, uneasy, and leave you unhappy. A cynical story that will make you doubt people and truth. Gloomy, sad, painful, and ultimately bitter, but entirely truthful. I ask that you not look away and see it through to the end, for that is your responsibility.
That was a chunk of Seiya's opening monologue in Blue Archive's 3rd volume, and this is the story of how you defy her. While Kivotos is a city in name, it functions as more of a country. With the president of this country mysteriously vanishing, the fate of its schools lie in uncertainty. Throughout Kivotos' history, the schools of Gehenna and Trinity have long stood in rivalry and warfare. With Gehenna being a school that embraces chaos, and Trinity being one that calls for order, their coexistence has always been a hot-button issue. The Eden Treaty is the first attempt to end all violent contact between the two schools, but establishing it, no matter what, will never be an easy process. Because the truth is that there's a traitor among Trinity, and it's your job to find her. The Makeup Work Club is a group of 4 individuals with low test scores, but also a group of people that Nagisa suspects of treason. Nagisa, having taken Seiya's position of power once she went missing, is the one person in Trinity who's capable of passing the Eden Treaty, and she's willing to burn as many bridges as possible to make that happen. One of those bridges is Hifumi. Hifumi is an average, yet polite girl who generally tries to stay out of trouble. Following rumors of having gone to a shady part of the city at night, her test scores, along with Nagisa's trust, have vanished. Further suspicion has been drawn toward Hanako and Azusa. The former used to be an honor student who now spends her time goofing off, while the latter is one whose social cluelessness is as strange as her lack of sleep. Finally, Koharu is being left as a hostage so that her former club can't have a say in the Eden Treaty. When the stakes are as high as this, Nagisa has given all 4 of these girls one avenue toward redemption. Pass the exam before the year ends, or everyone gets expelled. The catch is that she's only told this to Hifumi. When I first played Blue Archive's 3rd volume, I was hit with an instant sense of pleasant surprise. After all, gacha game stories aren't meant to be good. If anything, I saw the prior 2 volumes as proof of this, as stories that had their potential tragically squandered as the writers struggled to explain their ambitious world, resulting in characters who often felt one-note and undercooked. Needless to say, but after having sat through hours of mediocre writing, Volume 3 felt like a breath of fresh air. As players should be familiar with its world building through the story, events, and Momo talks, it allows for the story to put a greater focus on its characters, and it passes with flying colors. The genuinely solid sense of humor of the first 2 volumes is made even funnier than it was before. This time, it's delivered by characters who have far more defined quirks, personalities, and relationships among each other. Most of all, it's a story with a clear and defined theme. Trust is perhaps one of the most difficult subjects to write with maturity, as while everyone can understand its importance, many more understand the cruelty of when someone breaks it. Few stories even dare to touch this subject matter, and the few who do tend to have a dodgy track record. This ends up helping Volume 3 stand out to me as a story worth spreading. If anything I've said up to this point has convinced you to play Blue Archive, then I'd highly suggest giving the game a shot and coming back to this video once you've finished Volume 3. If you aren't interested in spending well over 75 hours to get to that point, then that's fine by me, but I will give a spoiler warning just in case. Imagine being Hifumi, having to deal with the personalities that she now has to become acquainted with, the most bombastic of which has to be Hanako, whose sense of humor is awfully suggestive. It's a presence that Koharu very vocally despises, as she holds strong views on purity and order. This is despite her more normally shy personality. Meanwhile, Azusa is a quirky individual whose expression hardly ever changes. As her understanding of social situations is limited, she'll often go along with Hanako's jokes to the absolute bewilderment of Koharu. It's because of how unusual these characters are that having someone as grounded as Hifumi allows for the topping that truly makes this cake special. These are characters strong enough to carry their own comedic slice of life story, and that's largely what the first quarter of the story is. Much of what makes the story so good later on simply can't exist without us being able to sink into their relationships and how they slowly start to develop trust within each other. This is all despite the fact that everything is trying to tear their trust apart. You still had to find the traitor among them. Yet early on, you make a declaration that will go on to define your character. Throughout this video, I've yet to refer to Sensei by his name. This is because he's really not a character in volumes 1 and 2, but rather a self-insert to observe the story from. That all changes here, however, when Sensei makes a vow to Nagisa that he won't look for the traitor. His role is to guide his students, and it's through doing so that he has to put his trust in every single one of them, even if it means someone betraying him. In terms of suspicion, there's only really 2 options. Despite Nagisa's paranoia, Hifumi is simply too earnest to be a real suspect, while Koharu is genuinely just too stupid to be one. This puts the audience's suspicion on Hanako and Azusa. When I first played Volume 3, I believed the suspect to be Hanako. With her deliberate failings and generally suspicious behavior, I believed her to be the traitor when Azusa seemed like too obvious of a red herring. But whether fortunate or not, it wouldn't take too much longer for Sensei to learn the truth. A key figure in the Eden Treaty that I had yet to mention is Mika. Mika, like Nagisa and Seiya, is a member of the Tea Party, Trinity's governing body. While she's not as involved in politics, she's much more willing to give Sensei information than her paranoid confidant. It's in this conversation that Mika explains 2 very important things to Sensei. Firstly, Seiya's dead. Secondly, there isn't a traitor. Well, not a traitor, but rather a victim of circumstance. Azusa is someone who Mika transferred to Trinity without Nagisa's consent. Azusa comes from a school called Arius, a school which shares Trinity's hatred of Gehenna, yet split off from Trinity generations ago, bearing a hatred of both schools in the process. Mika claims that she transferred Azusa to bring peace to both Arius and Trinity, although that goal has the potential to be stifled by Nagisa. In that case, the objective becomes quite clear. Sensei must save Azusa. Or so he thinks. As the weeks increase, so do Nagisa's anxieties. As more time passes without a traitor in her grasp, she chooses to increase the number required to pass the exam to a staggering 90 instead of 60. Despite her initial patience, this is a move that bewilders Hifumi, and results in her telling her friends the truth. With Hanako finally aware that her deliberate failings would lead to all their expulsions, she ends up apologizing for how much she worried Hifumi. Meanwhile, Azusa feels a surge of motivation from one of Hifumi's gifts. With the two finding a shared interest in the Periro mascot character, the sense of unity in this odd group of characters finally feels like it's coming to effect. It's only through all of this growth and development that Azusa can feel comfortable telling her side of the story. Unbeknownst to Mika, she's the traitor, and she was sent by Arius to kill Nagisa. As someone who had once lived her life numb to all of her violence, she initially accepted the role with next to no hesitation. But the makeup work club changed her. It was only through giving up Arius' hatred toward Trinity that she could finally have fun for the first time in her life. And it's through accepting those feelings that she has a change of heart. She's transformed her goal into protecting Nagisa, defying both Arius and the real traitor. What I really want is for Azusa to become a symbol of peace. That was the lie that Mika told Sensei, being the first person in the story to break his trust. As it turns out, Mika and Arius had had the same goal all along. She was the one who conspired to kill Seiya and desired to kill Nagisa. If or when she succeeds, it's her intention to have Azusa take the fall for the crime. And all this comes with the very uncomfortable implication that all this collateral exists solely out of a hate for Gehenna. When I first played through Volume 3, I came to a simple, yet understandable realization. This character has to be evil. What other reason could there exist for someone to go to these lengths, desiring for this much violence and bloodshed for such a genuinely insane reason? But that's where the writing really shines with its nuances, as this perspective will eventually go on to be challenged, all of which stemming from Sensei's philosophy. With his fortitude, Mika surrenders before she can put her hands on anyone, and the characters end up learning that Seiya is still alive, although in a coma. As a result, Trinity has not only been saved, but Mika has been spared of living with the regret of murder. But most of all, it means that the Eden Treaty can finally be signed. On the day of the Eden Treaty, buzz is flying about in every single corner imaginable. For such a long-standing rivalry to finally end is something that has all of Kivotos' citizens at edge as history begins to be made. With the students of Trinity and Gehenna looking at one another with scorn in their eyes, it's only a matter of time before they have to accept peace as the only option. In Seiya's first monologue, she mentions how paradise is a paradox. If paradise fails to suit someone, then it stops being paradise. Seiya, like Mika, finds Nagisa to be deeply naive to believe she found paradise. The entire time, Nagisa had her paranoia set on Trinity, going the entire time assuming that Gehenna would agree with her. To some Gehenna students, such as Hina, the Eden Treaty is indeed paradise. Unfortunately, it's not for the one who matters most. Makoto is the leader of the Pandemonium Society, Gehenna's equivalent to the Tea Party. Based on her club's name alone, I think you could guess what she thinks of the Eden Treaty. For someone who embraces chaos as much as the school she comes from, she finds the very idea to be preposterous. Yet she hid her contempt for it so she could use this moment as her chance to destroy Trinity. Too bad Makoto's a girl failure. Little did Makoto know, she was playing right into the hands of Arius, with their leader Saori using this as her opportunity to destroy both Trinity and Gehenna. Being unable to let go of their generation's worth of hatred, the Arius squad does everything they can to extract their vengeance, one that has severely wounded countless. Azusa is devastated by this news. Despite knowing their plans, to see such despicable actions be taken by the people who she grew up with is something that forces her body to move. When Hifumi tries to come with her, Azusa rejects her. With her attempted murder on Seiya, one ordered by the Arya squad before her transfer to Trinity, she feels responsible to stop them. For such an upstanding person as Hifumi to help her would mean to put blood on the hands of someone who's never entered such a brutal world. While she's grown to love Hifumi as a friend, she's yet to be able to trust that she'd be okay in such a dire situation. Thus, Hifumi has no other option but to break down crying as Azusa abandons her. When Azusa comes to challenge Saori, she comes to the conclusion she was expecting. Held at gunpoint, Saori lambasts Azusa for her betrayal. Friendship, trust, love, all of that is weakness. Futile, 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 futile! With no other options left, Azusa is forced to use Hifumi's gift as a means of escape. With the symbol of her friendship gone, Azusa sits alone, failing both Kivotos and Hifumi.
Azusa-chanが人殺しになるのは嫌です。そんな憂鬱で不愉快な物語、後味の悪い物語は、もしそれが正しいとしても、この世界の真実だとしても、私は好きじゃありません。私は平凡なのが好きです。平凡で何の個性もない私ですが、私のこの好きな気持ちだけは誰にも譲るつもりはありません。友情で苦難を克服して努力がけなされなくて、幼稚であっても最後にみんなが笑えるような物語、最後はみんなが幸せになる物語、そんな平凡な物語が好きです。誰であろうと私たちに強要はできません。私たちが作っていく物語は私たちが決めます。ですから今から始めます。私たちの物語を、学園と青春の物語を。
Trust is the main subject of Volume 3, and the story has a lot to say about it. The starting conflict shows this better than any other, with the differing ways that Sensei and Nagisa choose to handle the subject. While Nagisa lives a life of loneliness and paranoia, Sensei is able to see a friend group blossom. In a story where everyone from the Tea Party to the Pandemonium Society and the Arya Squad are all hiding their true intentions, the Makeup Work Club is the only group in the story that consistently chooses trust. This is despite all the betrayals happening left and right. Hifumi could have easily bought into the hate festered by every other character, a vengeance stemming from Nagisa betraying her. But Hifumi doesn't think of strength as rigidly as Saori does. True strength is being able to show vulnerabilities, and it's through doing so that she's able to change the lives of her club members. Koharu gains the strength to stand up for herself, Hanako gains the appreciation needed to take life more seriously, and most of all, Azusa was spared of becoming a murderer. Azusa is one of the most important characters in the story because her redemption arc makes one of the boldest statements I've seen from a piece of fiction. The statement that humanity is innately good. If Hifumi was able to bring the one who injured Seiya to realize the error of her ways, then what's stopping her and Sensei from influencing Mika and the Arya squad? Well, that's exactly what the final arc of the story is focused on. But how could the story put so much focus on these villains? These people who've done nothing but betray the trust of others? Well, As it turns out, unbeknownst to everyone else, there's a monster pulling the strings. Beatrice is a member of Gematria, Kivotos' evil organization. It's an organization that players should be familiar with, as Volume 1 featured the Black Suit trying to conquer Abydos, only to be stopped by Sensei. Volume 1 is a showcase of the disastrous harm that would be caused if any single one of them were to have any power over their students. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Beatrice was able to do. By seizing control over Arius after they split off from Trinity generations ago, it's Beatrice's goal to use Atsuko's royal blood as a sacrifice to destroy and rebuild Kivotos. In order to execute this plan, she needed to incapacitate everyone in her path through meaningless warfare. This includes the Arius squad. Despite Saori being loyal to a fault, sacrificing Atsuko is an order she'd never accept. It's only after having been defeated in the war that Saori finally realizes what Beatrice was planning all along, and chooses to run away with the rest of the squad, all in a last-ditch effort to keep Atsuko safe. Unfortunately, Atsuko gets captured, and it's at Saori's lowest point that she begs Sensei for his help. After all the terrible things she has done, she believes she has no path toward redemption, but she still wants to do everything she can to protect her friend. Of course, Sensei welcomes her with open arms, just as he did to her former classmate Azusa. Mika, on the other hand, had been held captive after her betrayal of Nagisa. Portraying herself as an unpredictable force, one who makes decisions on a whim, not a single character is able to wrap their heads around her actions. Except for Hanako. Given Hanako's exceptional intelligence, she comes up with a theory that leaves Mika shocked. In order to stop the Eden Treaty, all Mika would have had to do was hold Seia captive, but as Arius' goal was to kill her, Mika ended up falling into a despair stemming from that betrayal. When Seia was presumed dead, Mika accepted her title as a villain, thus birthing her plan to kill Nagisa. However, if Mika actually wanted to kill Nagisa, then why did she present herself as the traitor directly? Something that would make her a clear and obvious target. When Mika is presented with this question, she brushes it off, although she's clearly shaken when Hanako says she won't tell her findings to anyone else. After all, that's what she deserves for betraying Sensei. Despite Sensei not understanding her actions as well as Hanako does, he still chooses to defend her when she faces risk of expulsion. It's here that you really start to believe that Mika regrets her actions, and it's a very beautiful arc that she goes through. Until it's ruined. After a misunderstanding that results in Seia entering yet another coma, Trinity ends up putting the blame on Mika. Accepting that she'll never be forgiven by her school, she chooses revenge on the people who betrayed her. While she goes into it expecting to feel the raw and juicy satisfaction of Saori's suffering, what she instead gets is unexpected. Saori agrees that she deserves to be punished for her actions, thus robbing Mika of that satisfaction. It's at that moment where Sensei can finally swoop in and tell Mika that she does have a second chance. It's okay for her to make mistakes, and Sensei was able to stop her from doing any real harm. It's his responsibility to make sure she's a good person, so he'll give her infinite chances until she can get it right. After all, he did the same for the Arya squad. Can we prove anyone has ever reached paradise? I started the video with this monologue for a reason, as the question exists to challenge Sensei's philosophy. To create a paradise requires everyone to have trust within each other, but also requires that you act carefully when someone breaks that trust. The reason why the story is incomplete even after Hifumi's monologue is that we never got to see every way in which a betrayal can be handled. After all, Hifumi, Nagisa, and Sensei are all very forgiving people. Such a trait isn't easy to obtain, however, and I know from my own life. There was a time when my trust got absolutely shattered, where a monsoon of misunderstandings resulted in me hearing some of the worst things in my life. When this happened, I screamed, I yelled, and I cried. I thought I'd hold a grudge that I'd never let go. However, I couldn't let my anger consume me. To do so would be to rob us of understanding and prevent them a chance to grow and change. And making those declarations, those misunderstandings eventually turned into understanding, and it made me glad that I stayed patient. I chose forgiveness. I chose trust. Just like Sensei, I let this person redeem themselves. When I said that Blue Archive was making a bold statement by calling humanity good, it was a statement that I already believed. Really, it was what influenced the decision I eventually made in my own life. However, bad people do exist. To deny this would be to deny reality. When arguing that humans are good by nature, you have to explain how these bad people come to exist. For many, it's believed that bad nurture is what causes bad people. When our people were focused solely on survival thousands of years ago, humans needed to collaborate in order to survive, as they would otherwise get bodied by the harshness of nature. This meant that people would be patiently trained into competence, and anyone who tried to screw over the people with their selfish desires would get exiled from their group. In a civilized world where status and wealth is more important than survival, it makes it harder to overcome bad temptations. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of those in power to create an environment which can properly nurture its people. Beatrice, through generations of rule, created a culture of hate. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, dogs take after their owners. Well, the same applies to humans. Think about the deep-rooted struggles you have and who you got them from. I sure as hell know where I got mine from. Of course, I respect the ever-loving hell out of my parents for how they raised me, and I love them more than anyone else in the world, but it's not to say that I don't have struggles I need to overcome as a result of their parenting. Oftentimes, when people are confronted with this very natural idea that applies to so many people, they get defensive. It's not my fault, they say, as if that'll actually change anything. I believe that this lack of personal accountability has played a big part in the destructive culture of the internet. In an era where a single slip-up can ruin the careers and reputations of a person, vengeance has never been stronger. This has created a culture where forgiveness is rare and trust is even rarer. This is the predicament that Mika faces throughout her redemption arc. If the greater public won't give Mika the chance to redeem herself, then it only makes sense that she would choose revenge. But revenge is hate. All that revenge would do is further the cycle of violence that would only prove to make Beatrice stronger. But how do we stop that cycle? Well, it's by determining who someone is. Someone like Beatrice is a bad person who will repeatedly do bad things out of either malice or negligence. That much is simple, and it's generally understood that redemption isn't an option for these people once they hit a certain level of maturity. Things get more complicated, however, when we try to figure out what a good person is. There are many people who do bad things, but recognize that their actions are bad. They're people who constantly live in regret of their actions. Most people wouldn't consider these people good. The temptation to call them good when consoling them may be high, but doing so would be entirely dishonest. However, if this kind of person is able to do better and redeem themselves, then I think we should give them the chance to. After all, if we let hate foster, then all we do is distract ourselves from achieving paradise, the only way we can actually make change. The reason why Sensei and Beatrice are such perfect foils is because they show the two different ways in which you can raise a society. Beatrice uses the hate of her students to fester control over her own distorted desires, while Sensei chooses love. To Sensei, his students aren't pawns he can use for power, but are instead people who deserve the chance to overcome their trauma. The reason why I believe that humanity is innately good is because kindness is the only way to breed more kindness. Ultimately, that's how we go full circle toward exactly a year ago, when I made a video that has since changed my life forever. Ultimately, it's hard to be kind because our society is one which tempts its people into doing bad things. If your bad actions get noticed, then the consequences become unbearable for the average person to handle, as we're a species unprepared for the enormity of the internet. This results in a world where fear prevents people from being either good or bad. In Blue Archive, every student has a halo, a protective shield from gunfire. What I find so remarkable about Sensei is how he's one of the few characters who lacks one. This means that in situations where he's in more danger than anyone else, he'll still choose to do the right thing above all else. By the end of the day, Sensei is just an ordinary person. He's not proficient in combat, he lacks a halo, and yet he still chooses trust. Sure, the question of this video may be why we should trust, but the reality is that trust is important for the same reason kindness is. The more that you choose to trust, the easier it becomes for others to choose trust. Through choosing to be kind to people who have been abandoned by society, that's when they can have the opportunity to become kind themselves. Does paradise truly exist? That's the question that Seiya asks Sensei at the start of Volume 3, and this video is his answer. If you enjoyed this video, then I couldn't thank you enough. This is by far the most effort I've put into anything on this channel, and I really wanted to give this story the justice it deserves. To those who love this game as much as I do, I hope this video was to your liking. While normally I'd try to plug my Patreon in the middle of my videos, that didn't really work out for this one. So please, if you enjoyed this and want to support me, then that's by far the best way to do so. All the rewards will be displayed on screen for you to take a look at. Thanks for watching, and I hope that my next video can hold your attention past the credits as well.